And do that piece. So hello everyone, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Lauren Willette, and I'm the Folk Arts Fieldwork Coordinator for Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts. We're the state public folklore program that's housed within special collections in the Mullins Library at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. We have three mainstay programs: this web series, our apprenticeship program, and our community scholars training program. If you'll visit folklife.uark.edu, you can learn more, and we'll have a link for that in the chat. I have Meredith Martin-Moats with me, and I accidentally closed your bio, so you bear with me 2 seconds here. Meredith is a cultural worker, a writer, a radio producer, an oral historian, researcher. She does a lot of community organizing. She has a small farm, which is what we're going to focus our conversation on today. So she and her family operate Sulphur Springs Truck Patch. She calls this an experimental tiny farm, and increasingly research focused project in Harkey Valley, Arkansas. That was she lives on family land that is rightfully Osage ancestral land in Yell County. She also is the co-founder of the McElroy House, which is a community organization there in Dardanelle, and the co-director at the River Valley Adult Learning Alliance. And we'll be putting links for those different organizations into chat just very shortly. So Meredith, today, as I just said, we're going to mostly focus on your smallholder farmstead, your truck patch. But before we get to that, I just wanted to give you a quick opportunity to talk about some of the other work that you do at the McElroy House and with adults at the Adult Learning Alliance.
Yeah. So my day job is I am the director of the River Valley Adult Learning Alliance, and it's a literacy council. And we serve 5 predominantly rural counties in Arkansas: Pope, Johnson, Franklin, Logan, and Yell. We do all the stuff that a literacy council typically does. We help adult learners and their families meet their goals. So for a lot of people, that looks like getting GED, learning how to speak English, but we also have kind of a broader focus maybe than some of the other literacy councils. We also help people learn how to speak Spanish. We live in a community where about 40% of the people speak Spanish as their first language, so we have a decidedly bilingual approach to our work, even though the state does not. So we really believe in multilingual education in the state of Arkansas, and we really believe in family literacy as an approach, and so really multi-generational approach, even though we focus mostly on adults through our organization. So yeah, so we try to blur the lines between who's a student and who's a teacher, because everybody's always learning, and everybody always is teaching. Like, that's just kind of like what life is like. So that's my day job. I work with our outreach director, Alejandra Reyes, and we work across our main office is in Dardanelle, but we do have satellite locations in a couple of other places. So if you want to check that work out, and if you're in this area and you want to be part of that work, we'd love to have you. We partner with the AmeriCorps, with the Mexican consulate, and then we do like grant writing and stuff to do the rest of our work. So that's my day job. And the McElroy House is a nonprofit. It's pretty small and grassroots organization. Actually, we've been around for a long time now. My oldest children are 14, and we first got the special use permit to open this location when I was super duper pregnant with them. They are twins. I remember that meeting at the city council very well because I was very, very pregnant with twins. Um, and so, yeah, so this is a collective group. It's very much a collective group of people in the community. We bring people together across differences to build community. We have a decidedly anti-racist focus. We do a lot of stuff with food and gardening and community organizing, especially kind of in a small town rural area. And so right now we're working on a big community food project. There's Levi right there with blueberry bushes that we just planted last week. And this is a program that we're working on with the through the Arkansas. I just went blank, but it is through a big program with Arkansas Food and trying to increase local food in Yale County. And it's a very bilingual program. So if you ever want to come work with us, we'd love to have you. There's also craft night every Wednesday. We have a little free pantry, free library, and then we also work with other organizations that use our space. It is a small little house, so if people need a place to meet for other work, they're able to use the space as well. So yeah, that's the macro house.
Yeah, and I should have given warning, but as Meredith talks, I will be sharing the screen a little bit to give people some visuals. And I'm not going to give warning. I'm just going to kind of do it as it fits in with the conversation. So thank you for that. I feel like you could talk about many different areas because you're just so involved with your community and in so many different ways. But with it being really when I invited you for this time of year and had it in mind, because I love gardening and plants and all this stuff, I was like, oh, this would be such a fun conversation. So let's talk about Sulphur Springs Truck Patch and your small family farm that you work on. So could you just kind of describe that, what you're doing? Just tell us about it, what you're producing.
Yeah, sure. I guess like the first thing I'll say is like this this is if you're familiar with Dardanelle, we live outside of Dardanelle, in between Dardanelle and Danville. Dardanelle is about 4,000 people. Danville is about 2,000 people. So we live in between in a rural area called Harkey's Valley. Right before that is another little rural community called Chiquila. And so I want to start by saying that this is Osage ancestral land. For a while, there were a lot of Cherokee communities in this area. I always try to, there's a talk that, I can't remember if I sent this to you, Dina, but there is a talk that this a friend sent to me years ago by Dr. Kutcha Balding about what makes a good land acknowledgement. And sort of one of the biggest things that I learned from that, and I have really tried to institute, that a land acknowledgement should not just be like a verbal thing, it should be a call to action. So one thing that I talked to Dina about, if she can drop these links in, one of the things that I always try to do when I talk is that if you have resources available to you, there are two places that I always recommend people send financial resources if they have them. And one of them is the Osage Nation Language Revitalization School, which is out of Pawhuska. And if you can put that there. And then also one of the people that I learned the most from in terms of doing community work, there probably would not be a McRoy House if it wasn't for Michael Morrow of Sikh Museum in Kentucky. And they do a lot of historical work and reparations work. And so if you'll drop that in there. So just want to start before I talk about this place by saying definitely believe in land back and reparations work, and not just talking about it, but actually reallocating resources. So I'm going to put that there. If you have the money, please donate. So this area is so my dad grew up in this area. My family has been in this area for quite some time. But I'm in the process of trying to research more and more about this history and tell more and more about it as honestly as I can. But what I know at this point is it was mostly a logging area, and my grandpa and my dad worked in what you would call, basically they were sort of like migrant loggers. They would get paid to sort of log various areas and move around. And my grandpa had a small, what you would call a truck patch, which is where the name comes from. Do y'all know, does anybody know what a truck patch is? Like some people are familiar with that and some people aren't. Um, it's not a farm in the sense of like what you would think of as a farm. It's the idea is that you could grow enough food or something that you could load it up in your truck and take it into town and sell it out of the back of your truck. So it's sort of like a very small, plot that compared to a farm. It's not small depending on, you know, it's not tiny, but it's also not, not like farm level. And so that's where we got the name from, because my grandpa, oh, look, I even took this off the wall. Love my grandpa with his
Oh,
mule and whatnot, plowing stuff up. So he had a truck patch and grew like corn and tomatoes and beans and stuff like that. And would supplement his logging income with that. And so this whole kind of area was in my family for quite some time. I did not grow up out where we live right now. I actually grew up in town. I was a town kid in Dardanelle. Um, like I said, Dardanelle's about 4,000 people. It was about 3,000 people when I was growing up. So it wasn't like city, but I was a town kid. I did not grow up out in the country, but I spent tons of time out here because I had so many relatives out here. So several years ago, it's been like 5 years ago, we came back here. And now we live out here. That's the very condensed version of that story.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you. So what is it that you are kind of producing on in that space right now?
It's actually mostly flowers. Although this year is going to be the first year that we're going to be doing more food. And we've always done food for ourselves, but this is going to be the first year that we are selling some more food to market. We have done flowers to sell for, I should have calculated this for 3, 4, maybe 5 years. I should know. 4 years probably. We've done flowers, and each year we kind of add a little bit more. Like I said, I do have a day job and other stuff, so it's very much a part-time situation. But yeah, so, and we did mealworms for a while, which is a whole other story. But so mostly the flowers, and we sell those in town. And then we do some like vegetables for ourselves. We do some eggs and we do a couple of other things like that, but it's mostly flowers.
Um, are you so I'll go back to I was looking at your pictures and I
We're also an
like
accidental animal rescue. That's like, we just have animals. They just
oh,
come
you have
here. I'm
yeah,
like,
there's lots of animals. I feel like
yeah,
this you can
I'm
kind of
like, you know
see
what? You can stay. It's fine. Like
your
they just kind of roll up and then I'm like, sure, fine.
yeah, you can see like this beautiful view in this picture. But lots of animals. But so you do a lot of farming. I feel like this is very seasonal work. Maybe your routine changes as seasons change. So could you kind of walk us through like what's your sort of like year look like, or the growing season, whatever feels right?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So one of the things I actually really love about doing this, I'm maybe an overly blunt person, but I struggle with like massive anxiety, like just to be real. Like, and one of the things that I really love about doing like growing some of my own food is it forces me into a seasonal routine. If I don't, follow the seasonal routine, then I just waste a lot of time and effort, right? Like, because there's certain things that have to be done at certain times of the year. And if you don't kind of do them when it's time to do them, then the opportunity is gone. And so I actually love the seasonal aspect of it. Not all the time. I mean, sometimes I get up and I'm really mad about the fact that I have to get up and go do whatever it needs. Sometimes I really hate it. But at the end of the day, I actually really love that there's this sort of routine that has to happen. Um, so so I typically, get up and we've got chickens and all that. So feed the animals, sing gospel songs to the donkey. I'm sort of joking, but not really. Gotta go tend to the donkey. And then so like right now, what it looks like is flower season will be starting soon. So I've got a bunch of seedlings started. Check on them. Got some bulbs in the ground, check on them. So like because I still have a job in town, my day usually starts very early in the morning with about 2 hours worth of work early in the morning. Watering, I haven't automated the water yet. I will when it gets a little warmer. And it's really different every day right now, but usually putting some seeds in the ground if it's ready, or doing a little bit more seed starting. And then when I get off work in the evening, I'll come home, and then it's usually about 2 more hours of work, just kind of like maintenance. And then on the weekends, I'll usually put in more bulk, time. And so, yeah, so it's usually, and then by the time it gets to be, middle of, when the flowers really get started growing and stuff, I will, you don't ever really want to harvest in the middle of the day because they will wilt really quickly. So I tend to harvest either really early in the morning, or in the evening. And we have a refrigerator that we got at a free sale for like nothing, that's on our front porch. And so the flowers get picked and then they go in the front porch fridge to sit until they go into town to be sold. Um, so that's kind of, I hope I answered your question. That's kind of the day. And then in the winter, there's a lot of just prepping the soil, doing all of the things that didn't get done in the growing season because, you're always so behind. So it's like mending the fences or fixing the broken chicken coop, or the winter is really just as busy, but it's more busy with things that we're just didn't have time to do in the um, in the spring and summer.
Can you estimate what amount of acreage is specifically for the growing the vegetables? Not the whole size of your farm,
Gosh.
but just, do you know?
Yeah, it's not that much. Like that's the thing. It was pretty small at this point. And I will say that part of that is because, we don't have mechanized equipment. And I mean, there's a whole big, I try to be really honest about this. There's a whole discussion around, you know, um, the economics of, production and mechanized equipment, and oh, Leslie, she got in. What's possible, hola Leslie, what's possible with you know, without having mechanized equipment. So I actually don't know. It's under an acre that what we're actually growing on right now. If we're talking long term, like we eventually want to add, we have like a little bit of muscadines, but eventually we want to cover more space with muscadines, and we want to do some more with fruit trees, which will cover up a little bit more. But right now, it's out of our capacity to do any kind of mechanized stuff, which means it's always going to be pretty small.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how you're someone that I know even before you were doing the farm or the small farming on this land, you had done like gardens in your yard and have quite a number of years experience doing this type of labor. How are you seeing climate change sort of like in your day to day? Like how what's the effects, good or bad?
Yeah. Um, I love that question. And I mean, I think there's like a couple of things that immediately come to my mind. My background, even before I did folklore work and, went to school for folklore was oral history. I originally studied oral history. And one of the reasons I studied oral history to begin with, I feel like was because of my family. And one of the maybe one of the biggest stories that I think about a lot is like right behind our house is a creek that my dad always tells these stories about. And uh, when my dad was a kid, um, it ran all year, like, and they used to dip cattle in it. And you can see on the banks where it would run all year long, like you could see, how tall it was. And then I remember when I was a kid in the 80s, it would run about half of the year. But it wouldn't run all the year because I remember me and my dad would walk the creek bank and like walk, the dry beds. And now it just is pretty much a seasonal creek. And when it comes a really big rain or something like that, I can hear it from my front porch. It'll get really high. But it's dry a good portion of the year. And my dad was one of the first people to start the Northeast Dale County Rural Water Association out here because he remembers wells going dry out here and in the 80s and 90s. And part of that was from a lot of Tyson chicken houses, and that's a whole other discussion. But it was from a decreasing water table. And so I think there's, I don't want to oversimplify what's going on, but it's all, very um, so that's one thing that I think about a lot is like just the ways that I've seen like access to water change just in my own lifetime, but especially the way I've heard my dad tell stories about water in his lifetime. My dad's 83 now. Um, and also just growing up hearing stories about the changing, climate in my dad's lifetime. I grew up hearing about that all the time. I've often wondered why more oral historians have not been mobilized to do the work, to work with climate scientists. I've always felt like we're really missing the boat by not having more folklorists and oral historians partner with climate scientists. So if any of y'all have any grant writing abilities on that, somebody should really mobilize that. I mean, for real. But um, but I think that so that's something I've been thinking about. But in my own experience, and Leslie, I saw Leslie just join, and me and Leslie garden together in Dardanelle. And one thing that she and I have been talking about this year, and we're actually planning on doing something at the McGrory house, is I just had heat exhaustion for the first time this past year. And uh oh my gosh, like not that you couldn't have had a heat exhaustion before a change in climate. Obviously you could have. But I think like it's becoming like more frequent. Um, and I honestly feel like it's more of a public health concern than it used to be. And I don't feel like we've caught up with the resources that we need to with that. And I know for me, like I'm not quite the same. Like I didn't have a heat stroke. I just had heat exhaustion. But my body has not bounced back in the same way. And so Leslie and I were talking about that, about creating more like resources and conversations for people about identifying some of those, um, in a way, like in creating bilingual resources for people to identify that, and then just having more conversations about, because it just hits you and it happens really fast, and then it can be really dire. So I kind of got off track a little bit, but anyway, yeah. So I mean, I think about it. I think about it a lot because I think that sometimes the conversations that we have around climate change can be just sort of this hand wringing, like, oh, it's just all over, and then it's like, no, it's not. We're all going to have to keep eating and growing and existing, and so let's talk about how we're going to do that. And let's talk about how we're going to continue to find joy and how we're going to keep functioning, because we're going to have to. And so so I think like that's where my mind goes a lot, is to have just more sort of very clear-eyed conversations about what that's like, and continue to find um, everyday solutions for life and growing.
Yeah. Do you have, and you don't have to, but as you talked about having, needing more ideas for ways that I think people want to help contribute to making the problem better, in ways that like you feel like you're doing something because people like to help.
Mhm.
So if you have, something that pops in your mind that you wanted to share, or just something a way that you find like, oh, well, this is how I find a little joy and peace despite this sort of large concern that affects my life.
Yeah, like how do I find
Yeah,
that?
if you want to. That was definitely, I just
Um,
added this in.
no, that's fine. Yeah, well, I think talking about it openly, like, I mean, I I don't know where I'm about to go with this, so it may get weird, but I'm just this is where my brain is going. But I mean, I think I got into one of the reasons I even got into gardening and growing in the first place is I really believe that gardening is a practice of is a practice of grief, grief and like joy, that it's like there, if you don't know how to grieve, then you're not probably going to be a long-term gardener, because gardening and grieving to me are like very much hand in hand, in the same way that joy and gardening go hand in hand. And so I think that just having space for that grief and having space for that terror and that fear is really essential. I think trying to squelch it is absolutely ridiculous. And so just having more conversations, and then um, looking to people all over the world who are on the front lines, um, really following a lot of indigenous land practices, but not in a like surfacey way, like actually you know, uh, giving resources and really I think there's that. I think that there's also, just just kind of, I don't know. I see so many sort of people like kind of almost having this giving up mentality. Like it's just whatever. And I don't understand that at all. Like get rid of that even orientation to me seems like, I don't know about you, but I have 3 kids. Like I don't like that's just not even in the. So I think making room for grief and making room for fear, and not being afraid of those two things and making space for that, and kind of moving forward with that intention, opens up a lot of space for joy. I've always felt that like growing flowers for me is like is a process of dealing with grief. I started growing flowers to deal with the death of my mother. And so to me, like gardening is like growing food is one of the best places to process some of the most complex layers of fear and loss that there is. And then in turn, it's one of the best places to experience joy. That's what I
Yeah.
would say. I,
Yeah, I
I,
really
I
like
just
that
kind of went
metaphor
off the rails there, but
of grief and joy, and that you find those things in the garden. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna let that marinate for a while. I can tell you that's gonna stick with me. So you describe your farm as as generational family land. This is something I mentioned in the introduction, that rightfully belongs to the Osage, and that's not a take that I see a lot of people in your area publicly stand on. And so I'm just wanted to ask, what responsibilities do you feel like you have as someone with multi-generational ties to Arkansas, to the Ozarks, the Arkansas River Valley? What do you feel like your responsibilities are as a farmer?
I love that question. I feel like I'm still learning what I think those responsibilities are. So I feel like I'll give you my answer today, but I think if I hope in 5 years I would have a different and more nuanced answer for you. But I can tell you, or shoot, 5 months. I hope in 5 months I have a more nuanced answer for you, but definitely in 5 years. But I think that, I'm trying to understand more about the history of this land, so that I can be, so that the future of this land can look different. So I really, I don't believe, like I set up, my background was in oral history. And so I started out like basically as a history student years ago. And so I firmly believe that, you study history so that you can change the future. That's why you study history. And so so I think that like, I want to understand more. I know that my grandfather bought this from a man who ran a logging company, and he sold it to his loggers. He went out to the courthouse and was like, sell me the land you got for back taxes. And he would buy land that people had just left for back taxes and then sell it to his logging crews if they'd agree to keep logging for him. So that's as far back as I know. My grandpa was on the logging crew. So I think first and foremost, I want to know, and there was a fire at the Yale County courthouse in the 1860s. So the trail kind of ends there for me at this point, but I know like I've done enough historical research to be like, it ain't over. I'm gonna find it somewhere. Just don't know where yet. But anyway, so I feel like part of the responsibility is like, is continuing to do research and continuing to understand so that you, can understand that history and then make different decisions for the future. Um, I think that like the other thing I would say is uh part of our, as we're trying to figure out how we're going to make this land, be generate an income. We have a model to where I won't go into a ton of details about this, but if anybody wants to contact me offline, I'm more than happy to be transparent. But we have some of the proceeds from they go to the Osage Nation Language Revitalization School. That is something we feel very strongly about. And I have already talked to the school about that. And so I think that, it's like about actual resources, about actual resource sharing, not just about talking. And I think it's about, talking to my children, and thinking, not just about the past, but about the future. And I really hope that understanding a little bit more about like land use in a collective way for the future, but that's something I'm still trying to figure out, and not in isolation, but in community. So that's the part that really trying to learn from in community with other people. So don't know the answer to that yet. So, but down to keep learning.
I appreciate that that answer for multiple reasons, but because you acknowledge that you're still learning and you're gonna always be learning, which or that you want to always be learning. And that's just a value system that I personally agree with, but I just think it's powerful to admit when you don't have all the knowledge, and that you're still looking to learn and collaborate. That's a really powerful thing to say and do. Okay, so we will kind of turn a little bit now, and let me grab my let me get my PowerPoint pulled up. I Good. Okay. So my next question is about hugelkultur, which is a particular gardening practice. And I know that you've implemented at least a piece of hugelkultur in your own um, on your own property. So if you would, could you just talk a little bit about that and how it's working?
Yeah, like I actually first learned about, I mean, I'd seen it in books and stuff, but the first time I really saw someone do this was actually, I lived in Little Rock for years and years, and I lived over by UAMS, and there was a community garden over there, and they had done like a small hugelkultur plot it was doing really good during a drought. And then, um, and then, and then lightning hit a tree in our backyard in Little Rock and knocked over part of like a rotting tree. Um, and while we were living in Little Rock, and so I just left it there and then put some soil on it the next year. And so I did my own sort of like accidental like DI, hugelkultur, and it did really well. So I was like, this is pretty cool. So then when we moved out here, we have red clay soil out here, which I never met my grandpa. He died a couple of years before I was born, but I often wonder like what in the world kind of pesticides he must have been putting out here to get stuff to grow really well sometimes, which is a whole other story. But because it is red clay and I have struggled with getting stuff. So what we did here is we went under the hill to where my uncle Junior, which that is what we called him, had on his land under the hill there had been a storm, and it's mostly wooded, and so we just loaded up this truck and got tons and tons and tons of like fallen logs. If you are like a diehard sort of permaculture person, which I am most definitely not, I am a DIY for free, do it the best you can kind of person. There's certain logs that they recommend and some kinds that they don't. But we just took what we could find, and we brought those up and kind of dug down deep, put those in there. And then we started like layering it. We also used some cardboard. We did lots of leaves. We did like our own compost that we made. And then we did have some topsoil. And it has worked amazingly. And I still find, I'm still digging into when you go deep enough, the wood that's rotting. And this is like 4 years old now. And so it acts like a sponge, basically. So during the really, really, really dry months and stuff, it holds water. Obviously you got to experiment because if you do it like the wrong consistency, you can hold too much water. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, it's just magical and you do it and it's perfect. So you have to really experiment with the different ways to do it and your soil and what you're planting. But it'll eventually just kind of like go down, So like when we first started, it was really mounded up, and over the years, it's just rotted and gone down. But it's worked really well for us. It's pretty cheap to do, but it is pretty labor intensive. So, you have to think about how much time and, physical activity you have to give to it. But in terms of upfront costs, if you have access to leaves and limbs, then you're pretty good on the materials you need. So yeah, so we've done this, and I love it. I'll keep doing it over and over again. And I do it in my beds too, like just a version of it in like planting beds whenever trees fall down, or trees are rotted. I always try to reuse them. I'm kind of a I'm kind of obsessed with dirt. And so, when the tree rots and it's got those little like strips of like, oh, I just love that stuff because it's like a little sponge and it's so cool. So anyway.
Um, so in the heat, the hottest part of summer, is there a pretty big difference? And I'm getting the emails and I'm sure everybody can hear it. I'm sorry about that. Is there a pretty big difference though in the amount of water that you need to put on
Yeah,
this portion of your garden versus the other?
there definitely is. Yeah, it'll hold the moisture like so much better because it's, holding it down. I'm pointing at the screen, but where the logs are, like it holds it, especially after a big rain. Like that's when I really notice it. Like if you get, like in the heat of the summer, like you may have one big rain, but then you may go like a week or two without anything or even longer. So it like, well, after you have a big rain, it'll hold it for so much longer. So I mean, I might not water for a week after a big rain. You know, because it's just like, and you can walk on it. You can just see the water like come out the sides. And so yeah, it really, 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 really holds it. And so yeah, like I'm totally sold on the hugel culture. Like I said, it's just it is labor intensive, but you can also kind of do it in a way where you can make it work for you. Like I said, if you've got a tree that just fell down, like, and you don't mind where it's at, just put you a garden on top of it. Seriously, just be like, that'll work. And then just, you know, place you something on top of it. Because if it's kind of already rotted, because it will just save you so much water and so much time.
Yeah, I it feels like a some sort of cheat code.
Yeah,
So
it is
uh,
kind of
my next
it's like
question.
a forest floor, you know? I mean, it's like you're basically, this is like the way I always talk to people about it when I, like, if they're new, like, again, I'm not a permaculture expert. And if someone is, they're probably like, she's telling you all the wrong, like, I'm more of a just DIY grow the food for the people kind of person. I'm not like a purist. But it's sort of like you're mimicking the forest floor. I mean, it's basically like, you know, again, these are like, you know, these have been food ways that people have done for generations, and, you know, indigenous communities, and they're nothing new. You're just like, you're mimicking the forest floor. This is what happens every day in the woods.
Yeah. Um, yeah, this it's so neat. I find that super interesting. The the next question I have is just kind of about your donkey. You got a donkey you already mentioned, and the other some other animals. So how do the animals contribute to the labor that you do or just to your life? Like,
Um, I love that question. So I'll be real with you about the donkey and so I have this funny, okay, let me back it. So the donkey, so my grandpa always had, like I said, my dad and my grandpa were loggers. And so I always grew up hearing stories about mules, um, and donkeys to some degree, but especially mules. And so whenever we moved out here, like, I was just like, I got I gotta have a donkey or a mule. Um, so the how we wound up with Jenna is kind of a long story, but she needed a home, um, but and then she kind of came here, and she came to us with that name. Um, yeah, she's my bestie. So she was kind of a wayward donkey in need of a home. But I would say that she kind of helps me connect to my own ancestors in a way that I hope is helping me rethink what the future looks like. Um, I was an only child growing up, raised by people who were considerably older than me. Was raised mostly by, you know, elderly people, and my parents. And I don't know, like there's just I spent a lot of time with animals as a kid, and so I like to sing donkey. I like to sing gospel songs to my donkey. It's a way to deal with my anxiety and existential angst about the state of the world, I suppose. But also in more practical terms. Now I can't do this on the food because you can't sell food like this because it would be against state regulations. But people don't eat flowers. So I can fertilize flowers with donkey poop. So so Jenna lovingly helps me make this red clay soil very it makes everything grow. So we say that all of our flowers are donkey approved. And we say that she sort of like approves each one. And in a way, she really does. Um, she lovingly, her poop just goes so far. Now I can't do that one with the vegetables. I cannot use horse manure for vegetables and sell them, but I can for flowers because nobody eats flowers. But yeah, so I composted, of course, I do all the safe stuff, so please nobody get me in trouble. You have to compost it for quite some time. You can't put fresh manure, all that kind of stuff on there. But yeah, so I bring them out to her and I let her check them out and I say like, hey, Jenna, you think these are ready to sell? And then, she says yes. But yeah, I just love her. She's like got such a sweet temperament. She's very ornery, she doesn't do anything that she doesn't want to do. Um, I like love the sound of a hee-haw in the morning. Um, Nothing makes me happier. Um,
Yeah, so you
so
can follow and see the Jenna approved flowers on Sulphur Springs Truck Patch Facebook page, which I wanted to pull up real quick. I'm gonna switch screens again because I wanted to show that, and I still have two more. So you have some rabbits, or I
yeah.
assume you have more than one rabbit, and then we have chickens.
Yeah. I
I'm gonna
use the
go back.
rabbit poop for the same thing. Rabbit
Right,
poop
right.
also helps. Yep. Also helps with the soil.
Um,
Mhm.
do
We have
the
a
other
lot.
animals add like a similar value to your daily life, like Jenna, or does she sort of Jenna kind of the favorite, but has a special?
I mean, Jenna is that well, we have a little miniature horse named Ziggy. We also love him very, very much. We got Ziggy as a companion animal for Jenna because equine, especially donkeys, really should not live alone. It's really not good for their mental health. So we looked for, we don't, buy any of our animals. We're just sort of like, anybody have a horse they need to get rid of around here? Like you can sometimes find animals that people can't take care of anymore. And so we have a little horse named Ziggy, and he's kind of an odd little bird, but we love him very much. He's kind of cantankerous, but so he's I can't tell if him and Jenna are besties or if they drive each other crazy. But in any case, they're always together. And then we have chickens. I do sell eggs or trade eggs. I do a lot of trade with people. And then we have Hargan, the pig, in the background, and he was kind of I did never set out to have a pig. He was born as a meat pig, but he is just a entertaining pet pig, or a hog. He's starting to get his tusks in, but he's very very tame. And so yeah, he lives here and he's very funny. I like to joke about how he gets like a spa day. He likes to sit in mud puddles and, he's hilarious. He brings me a lot of he cracks me up. He's very funny.
Yeah,
My daughter named him Parkin. I don't know why.
I love it. So we're getting kind of close to the end of my questions, and then I'll open it up for the audience to ask any questions that they might have. But I gotta make a quick decision here. I guess I'll end my questions with this one. So, um, what ways do you find that you feel most connected or feel most like a sense of place with Harkey Valley? Like how do you make that connection?
I love that question. Well, I love I just feel like beyond grateful to live out here. Like I said, that I grew up coming out here. And I didn't never really think it was going to be an option for me to live out here. And I'm really grateful that I have been able to. But I think that I reckon, how would I say this? I recognize that I am incredibly privileged to be able to live out here. And so I think that like one of the ways that connects me to this place is to figure out how to learn and be vulnerable and share what I learn and share the resources and kind of envision like learn as much as I can from the past, and also work in community with other people to build something for the future helps me feel, connected. And so like if I'm talking about the creek, for example, that's behind us, so like, to acknowledge that that creek is dry most of the time. Um, and that's really scary, but I also have 3 kids and there's got to be a future. And so what does that future look like? And how do we work together to get to that future? Or, um, and to recognize that I don't understand all the time what it means, to to be here, but that I'm not going to give up trying to figure out what it means, and to keep learning and to be in community while I'm learning. So I think it's like that helps me feel connected. And having people ask me questions, I mean, I am like, it is hard for me to answer. Like when I have people ask me questions like that, I get like, I come across as always like very open and kind of talkative, but internally, like, I'm like, I don't know, but I want to keep trying to learn. And I want to keep trying to, I just feel like, I'm, like I said, I'm very lucky and privileged to have this space. And I want to do right by it, and I want to do right by whatever the future looks like. And so that helps me feel connected, is thinking about like, what kind of future do we build?
I think that's a wonderful answer. And just so that I make sure that I get this in, I want to take a second to thank you for being here, sharing your time, your wisdom, um, and your energy with all of us.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it, and it's been wonderful. Does anybody have any questions? You're free to unmute and ask out loud, or you can type them in the chat and I will read them out loud.
I see Dexter too. Hey, Dexter and Leslie. How fun.
Think.
Mhm.
I assume that it's Dexter who was a community scholar when we were in Russellville in, oh gosh, was that 2022? Yeah, I think so. I can't they all run together, the dates and the years, but I remember my people. That's the important part.
Yes, yes, yes. Hi. It's good to see you.
Good to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
We are Meredith is a gem in this area.
Yeah.
Keeps us grounded.
So
Ver-
Meredith, I'll ask one more question since we have a minute of silence and I'm not quite ready to let you go. Can you talk a little bit about the community garden at the McElroy house?
Yeah, sure. Um, well, I will say, because she's on here, the person who is helping do all the amazing work at the garden at the McElroy house this year is Leslie Lopez, who is, there she is. She said, I'm here. Hey, Leslie, are you able to turn your screen on? You can tell me, you can just be like, no way. Leslie is, so Leslie is doing all of the, kind of heading up the garden work at the McElroy house this year. But if you go to the McElroy house Facebook page, you can follow along, but we're doing, a program, with Arkansas Community Foundation as part of a local food resilience. I'm going to butcher the name of the original grant, but, anyway, there's Leslie. This is Leslie, y'all. Meet Leslie. And so Leslie is helping is overseeing all the gardening stuff. And so we're doing all these really cool bilingual Spanish and English gardening programs. And you can follow all the work that we're doing. Yeah, and if you come to this area, we will put you to work in the garden, right, Leslie? We will be like, hey, come grow food with us.
We almost die left.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Dial up internet. We all live in kind of rural area, don't work too low. But but anyway, yeah. So follow that page, And we would love to come help, have you guys come check it out, because we're also working with a food bank called Sharing and Caring, to do some growing with them too, with food that'll be in the food bank this year. So yeah, we're super excited about that.
Yes, yeah. Maybe in a future year I'll have you on to talk about the McElroy House specifically, because you're doing a lot of great community work there, collaborative community work. I know that you like to make sure that your helpers get credit, your collaborators get credit. So yeah, and you guys do a lot of interesting folk-life events and work in that space too. So I'm gonna give one more shout out for questions real quick. And if I don't kind of see anything, then I'm gonna end it. So thank you guys all so much for coming out, spending your afternoon with us. Again, Meredith, thank you so much. And you guys can all find the recording of this on Arkansas Folklife's Arkansas Folk and Traditional Arts, YouTube page. So thank you so much and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye. Thank you.